Amara Chidinma Okonkwo lay on her back, beneath the wing of an aging Cessna Citation, her fingers navigating the metal innards of the hydraulic system with the familiarity of someone reading Braille. Sweat trickled down her temple, mixing with the red dust of Lagos that seemed to seep into every crack of that space. Outside, the noise of Murtala Mohammed International Airport was a chaotic symphony, planes roaring, vendors shouting pure water, cold water, the eternal hum of generators fighting against yet another NEPA power outage. She turned the wrench with surgical precision. Click, the leak stopped. Amara slid out from under the aircraft, wiping her hands on a rag that had been white in some past life. The October heat in Lagos was merciless, even at 7 in the morning, turning the hangar into an industrial sauna. On the dusty walls, faded posters of Boeing and Airbus bore witness to better times, when this space was still called Okonkwo Aerospace Maintenance, with pride, not desperation. Chidi, her assistant, entered carrying plastic bags filled with still hot akara. The smell of fried bean cakes made Amara's stomach growl. "Oga, madam, you spent the night here again?" He set the coffee on the makeshift workbench, shaking his head. "Your mother will kill me if she finds out I'm not taking care of you." "Chidi, I'm 32 years old. I don't need a babysitter." Amara bit into the akara, the spices exploding in her mouth. "And this citation needs to be ready by tomorrow, or we lose the client." He crossed his thin arms, the Arsenal jersey too faded to still show the crest. "Client who's paying how much exactly? 50,000 naira, 60,000. Meanwhile, the bank called yesterday. Again." Amara didn't respond. The taste of akara turned ashen in her mouth. She knew exactly how much the bank wanted. 240,000 naira by the end of the month, or they'd foreclose on the hangar. 2 years fighting to keep this place standing after Zenith Aviation destroyed her, and everything would crumble in 4 weeks. Her phone buzzed on the workbench. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Creditors had become creative, but something made her answer. "Amara Okonkwo?" The male voice was smooth, too polite. "I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Thabo Molefe. He requires your services." Amara nearly dropped the phone. Thabo Molefe, the South African billionaire whose telecommunications conglomerate had just closed a deal to expand into 5 West African countries. His face was on digital billboards all over Victoria Island. "Mr. Molefe is aware that I work alone in a small hangar, right?" He's aware. The lawyer, had to be a lawyer, that bureaucratic tone was unmistakable, paused. "His Gulfstream G650 has a mechanical failure that 5 specialized teams, including Gulfstream engineers flown in from the United States, haven't been able to solve. Someone mentioned your name." Amara felt her blood freeze. Someone. What someone still dared to speak her name in those circles? "I'm offering 500,000 naira for a complete diagnosis. If you manage to repair it, 2 million. Chidi was staring at her with wide eyes. 2 million naira. Debts paid, 6 months of breathing room, maybe even hire another mechanic. "No," the word came out before she could think. Silence on the other end. Chidi made a frantic gesture of, "Have you lost your mind?" "Ms. Okonkwo, perhaps you didn't hear the amount. I heard perfectly. I don't work with the kind of people who hire your boss." She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Chidi stood frozen, mouth open. "Amara, you just refused 2 million? "I know what I refused." She threw the dirty rag on the workbench. "You weren't there, Chidi. You didn't see what that world does to people who don't play their game. I won't sell myself again." "This isn't selling yourself. It's surviving." He stepped forward, voice rising. "Look around, Amara. This place is falling apart. You barely eat. When was the last time you visited your mother in Enugu? When was the last time you did anything besides work and punish yourself?" The words cut deep because they were true. Amara looked at the hangar. Cracks in the walls, old tools she kept running through pure stubbornness. The silence that used to be filled by a team of 8 people. Before Zenith, before the trial, before Engineer Adebayo, her mentor, the man who promised to stand by her side, turned his back on her in court. The phone rang again. Different number now. She considered ignoring it, but Chidi was staring at her with an intensity that clearly said, "You're afraid to prove you can still do it?" "Yes?" "Ms. Okonkwo." This time, it was a female voice, younger, more direct. "I'm Zanele, executive assistant to Mr. Molefe. He asked me to call personally. Sir is here with me now and would like to speak with you." Before Amara could respond, a deep, grave voice took the line. "Ms. Okonkwo, Thabo Molefe, I'll be direct because I know your time is as valuable as mine. I need to fly to Addis Ababa in 72 hours to close an $800 million merger. My jet is grounded because nobody, and I literally paid the best in the world, can figure out what's wrong. I was told you're stubborn, difficult, and the best aeronautical engineer who ever set foot in Lagos. Two of those qualities irritate me. One interests me deeply. Are you coming to see the jet or not?" Something in his voice, not arrogance, but a kind of pragmatic weariness, made Amara hesitate. She looked at Chidi, who was holding a crumpled paper. The bank letter. Final notice. "I'll see the jet." She swallowed hard. "But I'm not promising anything. I would never ask you to promise something you can't deliver." When she hung up, Chidi was smiling for the first time in weeks. "Now you just need to figure out what 5 international teams couldn't." He laughed, but there was nervousness there. "No pressure." Amara grabbed her worn backpack, tools, manuals, the red notebook where she kept notes from every job since university. MIT seemed a lifetime ago. That Igbo girl from Enugu with stars in her eyes, full scholarship, first in the family to study abroad. What naivety to think excellence would be enough. Molefe Enterprises' executive hangar was on the other side of the airport, a completely different world. Glass, steel, air conditioning that actually worked. Amara parked her old Honda Accord between Range Rovers and Mercedes. A security guard stopped her at the entrance. "Deliveries in the back. I'm an engineer. Thabo Molefe is expecting me." He looked her up and down, her grease-stained clothes, dusty sandals, hair tied in a faded Ankara scarf. The kind of look she knew too well. Before he could respond, a tall woman in an impeccable suit appeared. "Ms. Okonkwo, I'm Zanele. Sorry for the embarrassment. Come." Amara followed through refrigerated corridors where framed photos showed Molefe's rise, from telecommunications technician in Soweto to billionaire magnate. In the private hangar, the Gulfstream G650 gleamed under LED lights. A $65 million aircraft. She'd worked on jets like this at Zenith. She knew every system, every bolt. Thabo Molefe stood near the wing, phone to his ear, speaking in Zulu. Tall, mid-40s, suit that cost more than her car. He finished the call and turned. 70 hours now. He didn't offer a handshake. 5 teams, 3 continents, $500,000 in diagnostics. Nothing. The problem only appears at specific altitude, disappears on the ground. Flight control systems become intermittent. They want to sell me a new jet. I want this jet working. Amara climbed the G650 stairs. Cream leather interior, polished wood, smell of luxury and money. She set down her backpack and began working, her fingers already searching for access panels. Molefe watched, arms crossed. "I was told you were fired from Zenith for reporting a counterfeit parts scheme." She didn't stop working. "You were told correctly. I was told you lost the case, that your mentor testified against you." "Also correct. Why on earth did you do it then?" "Report." Amara finally looked at him. "Because 3 pilots died when a jet crashed in Ivory Coast. Counterfeit hydraulic parts that Zenith installed. I had the documents. I thought doing the right thing mattered." "And did it matter?" "It cost me everything." She returned to work. "But I'd sleep worse if I'd done nothing." Something changed in Molefe's face. He nodded to Zanele. "Give her full access. Tools, proprietary manuals, everything. Call her assistant if needed. 70 hours. Over the next 12 hours, Amara dismantled systems the specialists had barely touched. Chidi arrived with additional equipment, eyes shining at seeing the jet. She barely noticed, lost in electrical diagrams, hydraulic schematics, computer codes. The problem was a ghost, Appeared, disappeared, left traces but no concrete evidence. At midnight, the hangar was empty except for her. Amara lay under the fuselage, hands stained with grease, eating cold Amara Chidi had left. Exhaustion weighed on every muscle. Her phone rang. Mother. Amara, my daughter, are you well? Her voice, soft in Igbo, broke something inside Amara. She always lied. I'm fine, Mama. But this time the words wouldn't come out. Hot tears ran down her face, silent, inevitable. Mama, Her voice failed. Silence on the other end. Then a song, quietly in Igbo, the same one she sang when Amara was little and woke with nightmares. Nwam chifo, onye nwegi no na echegi. My daughter, don't cry. The one who owns you is watching over you. Amara held the phone against her ear, lying under a $65 million jet, crying as she hadn't cried since the trial. Everything coexisting in that moment. Impossible luxury above, shattered dreams around, and a simple human connection in the middle, reminding her she didn't have to carry everything alone. When the call ended, she felt lighter and more frightened at the same time. She wiped her face and returned to the schematics. She had 60 hours. 48 hours later, Amara had identified the pattern. The problem wasn't in a single system. It was in the interaction between three: hydraulic, electrical, and flight control software. An undocumented design problem that only manifested in specific altitude and temperature conditions. Common conditions on the Lagos-Johannesburg route. She called Molefe at 3 in the morning. I found the problem, but it's complex. I need access to old maintenance records from other G650s that flew this route. You'll have them. At 7 in the morning, Zanele arrived with digital files from 5 different operators. Amara dove into the data, looking for patterns. Chidi worked beside her, processing numbers, cross-referencing information. Here, she pointed to a sequence of error codes. 3 other jets had similar symptoms, all temporarily resolved, none permanently, because nobody realized it was a systemic problem. And you can fix it? Amara bit her lip. Being able to fix it meant modifying proprietary components without manufacturer authorization. It meant assuming total responsibility if something went wrong. It meant risking everything again. I can, but I need help. The words cost her. Chidi looked surprised. I need to talk to someone in South Africa, an engineer who worked on one of the similar cases. Molefe appeared behind them. Obviously hadn't slept either. Name? Naledi Kumalo. She works for Skytech in Johannesburg. I'll get the contact. 2 hours later, Amara was on a video call with Naledi, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and a tired smile. They'd never spoken, but knew each other's work. Competitors in theory, allies in reality. I saw your name in the files. Naledi adjusted her glasses. I always wondered why such a brilliant engineer was working alone in a small hangar. Long story. All the good ones are. Naledi smiled. Show me what you found. For 3 hours, they shared data, theories, experiences. Naledi had seen variations of the problem. Together, they identified the solution, specific modification to a hydraulic valve that affected the electrical system's response timing. It'll work. Naledi seemed confident. But you need to be surgical. Margin of error is 0. When the call ended, Amara looked at Chidi. We'll need 48 hours of uninterrupted work. Then we'd better order more Akara. But they worked through the night and the following day. Molefe appeared periodically, bringing food, coffee, staying silent while she worked. Once she caught him reading Zenith case documents on his tablet. Why are you reading that? Curiosity. He didn't look away. You were right. The documents proved it, and they destroyed you anyway. Corporate world. Amara returned to work, but her hands trembled slightly. Yes and no. He moved closer. My first job, I fixed phones in Soweto. One day I discovered my boss was selling stolen devices. I reported it, lost my job, was blacklisted for 2 years, nearly starved to death. Amara stopped, looking at him for the first time as a person, not a symbol. But I knew one thing they didn't know. Molefe smiled slightly. I was better than all of them. I just needed one chance to prove it. You know that too, Amara. You're afraid not of failing, but of being right again and being punished for it. The words hit like a punch. She opened her mouth to deny it, but couldn't, because that was exactly it. Every time she picked up a tool, part of her sabotaged the work, scared of being too excellent, too visible, too vulnerable. Finish the jet. Molefe turned to leave. Not for money, not for me, because you need to prove to yourself that you don't have to be afraid of your own competence. 36 hours later, with 6 hours remaining before the deadline, Amara tightened the last bolt. The system was modified. Theoretically, it should work. Theoretically. We need to test it on the ground. Chidi was visibly nervous. Molefe arrived with the flight crew. We'll simulate altitude conditions with pressurized systems. Amara connected the diagnostic computers, heart beating wildly. Everything depended on this, not just money, her identity, proof that she wasn't just a bitter whistleblower, but a brilliant engineer who deserved to be there. Starting sequence. For 3 minutes, everything worked perfectly. Then, without warning, alarms exploded. Electrical systems failed violently. Lights flickered. The entire jet shuddered. "Abort! Abort!" the co-pilot shouted. Amara shut everything down, hands trembling. Heavy silence fell over the hangar. She looked at the data. Impossible. The modification should work. You sabotage my jet. Molefe's voice was ice. Did you do this on purpose? What? No! Amara turned, incredulous. I didn't. Then explain what just happened. He was red-faced, veins bulging in his neck. I trusted you, gave you full access, and you nearly destroy a $65 million aircraft 6 hours before my final deadline. The words cut because they echoed memories. The courtroom, accusations of sabotage, incompetence, bitterness, history repeating. Get out! Molefe pointed to the door. Get out of my hangar. Amara grabbed her backpack with hands that no longer felt like her own. Chidi tried to argue, but she shook her head. Outside, the Lagos sun beat down mercilessly. She sat on the hot hood of the Honda and looked at the sky, where planes took off normally, piloted by people whose systems worked, because she and others like her did the right work even when nobody saw. It was over. Everything was over. Her phone vibrated. Chidi, don't hang up. Please, just listen. I was cleaning your tools and found something. The red notebook fell and loose pages came out. Amara. They're notes from engineer Adebayo. He kept a personal diary. There are entries about you, about the Zenith case. Chidi, I don't want... He wrote that you were right, that he lived with shame until he died, that the most cowardly thing he did was turn his back on you in court. Pause. There's an entry from 2 days before he died. Amara Okonkwo was everything I tried to be and failed. She chose integrity. I chose survival. Only one of us can still sleep at night. Hot tears ran down Amara's face. Adebayo died last year, heart attack at 53. She hadn't gone to the funeral. You weren't wrong, Amara. You never were. And you're not wrong now about the jet. I saw your work. It's perfect. There has to be another explanation. Amara wiped her face, breathed deeply, then deeper. Adebayo spent his whole life with that choice. She wasn't going to do the same. She went back to the hangar. Molefe was yelling at someone on the phone. She ignored him, went straight to the diagnostic computers and started reviewing data again. I told you to leave. Molefe hung up abruptly. And I don't work for you yet, so I can stay where I want. She didn't take her eyes off the screen. Be quiet and let me think. Something in her tone made him stop. Zanelli and Chidi watched, tense. Amara went through every line of code, every sensor, every reading, and then she saw it. A tiny pattern in the data that shouldn't be there. She pulled up original technical specifications and compared. It wasn't my modification that failed. She turned to Molefe. It was an original component that's defective. Look, she pointed at the screen. This temperature sensor was replaced during the last scheduled maintenance, but see the serial number, it's counterfeit. Absolute silence. Fake part. Her voice was controlled, but anger boiling underneath. Exactly like at Zenith. Someone in your supply chain is cutting costs with uncertified parts. My modification worked perfectly, but the defective sensor sent wrong data to the system, causing a cascade of failures. Molefe approached the screen, studying. He called someone, spoke rapidly in Zulu, then in English. I want a complete audit of all suppliers, now. He hung up and looked at Amara. How long to replace the sensor? 2 hours if I have the right part. Zanele, use my personal helicopter. Go to Gulfstream headquarters in Lagos. Get the sensor directly from the manager. Don't accept it from a third-party supplier. While Zanele ran out, Molefe stood in silence for a long moment. I accused you unjustly. Yes, you did. In my defense, I was afraid of losing $800 million. Fear isn't an excuse for cruelty. Amara began preparing tools for the replacement. But I understand fear. I live with it every day. Fear of what? You're one of the best engineers I've ever met. Fear that every time I do the right thing, I'll be punished again. Fear that integrity is a luxury people like me can't afford. She finally looked at him. Fear that I'm right about my capability and the world still chooses to crush me for it. Molefe nodded slowly. When you finish the jet, I want to offer an executive position at Molefe Enterprises. Executive salary, full benefits, your own team. No? He blinked, surprised. I appreciate the offer, sincerely. Amara smiled for the first time in days. But I'm never going to work for anyone again. I'm going to rebuild my business, my way, with my integrity intact. However, she paused, I would accept a consulting contract. I evaluate aircraft in your fleet. You pay per project. I keep my independence. Molefe extended his hand. Deal. When Zanele returned with the certified sensor, Amara worked with surgical precision. Chidi beside her, anticipating every tool she needed. 2 hours later, it was ready. Final test. This time, all systems functioned perfectly. Green across all diagnostic screens. Complete flight condition simulation. No errors, no failures. Molefe was going to do the actual flight test in an hour. Certified pilots ready. Before boarding, he handed Amara an envelope. 2 million naira, as promised, plus a 500,000 bonus for solving under extreme pressure. Amara held the envelope, the weight different from anything she'd carried in 2 years. It wasn't just money, it was validation, proof, redemption. Thank you. I'm the one who thanks you. You saved more than my jet, Amara. You reminded me that there are people who don't sell out, even when the whole world says they should. He climbed the stairs. See you on the next project. The G650 took off at 6 o'clock, exactly on time. Amara and Chidi watched from the tarmac, the roar of engines vibrating in their chests. When the jet disappeared into the pink clouds of Lagos sunset, Chidi shouted victory, jumping. 2 million! 2 million! Amara, you did it! She laughed, the sound strange in her own throat. When was the last time she'd really laughed? At the bank, 2 days later, she paid all debts. Signed documents that secured the hangar for 5 more years. Hired 2 new mechanics. Ordered new equipment. But the moment that mattered most was 3 weeks later, when she drove to Enugu. 5 hours crossing Nigerian roads, high-life music playing, windows open, letting the wind mess up her hair. Her mother's house was modest, painted cheerful yellow, garden full of medicinal plants. Ngozi Okonkwo came out before Amara even turned off the engine, arms open, wide smile. Nwam, my daughter. Amara hugged her tight, feeling the fragility in shoulders that used to seem so strong. When they pulled apart, her mother touched her face with both hands. You look different, lighter. I feel different, Mama. Amara held her hands. I wanted to apologize for being stubborn, for worrying you, for thinking I had to carry everything alone. Ni, you're my daughter. Stubbornness is a family inheritance. Her mother laughed. But I learned something from you too. I learned that sometimes stubbornness isn't a flaw, it's strength. You didn't give up when anyone else would have given up. That's not stubbornness, that's courage. They spent the weekend cooking together, insala soup, jollof rice, fried plantain. Neighbors came to visit, curious about the daughter who had gone to America and come back changed. Amara told stories, laughed, let herself be just a daughter for a few days. On Sunday, before returning to Lagos, sitting on the veranda watching chickens scratch, her mother spoke softly. "Your father would be proud. He always said you had a special fire inside. Fire that doesn't go out, it just burns differently." Amara swallowed the lump in her throat. Father had died when she was 15. He never saw her graduate, never knew she'd make it to MIT, never saw everything she built and lost and rebuilt. "I think I finally understood what he meant, Mama. It's not about never getting burned. It's about choosing what's worth burning for." 6 months later, Okonkwo Aerospace Maintenance had 8 employees and contracts with 3 airlines. Amara was in the hangar, now renovated, painted, with new equipment, when a young woman arrived with a resume. "My name is Adayez. I graduated in mechanical engineering from the University of Lagos. I heard about you, about what you did at Zenith, about how you didn't give up." The girl was at most 23, eyes shining with the same hunger Amara knew well. "I wanted to work with someone who would teach me that doing the right thing isn't naivety. It's a choice." Amara looked at her and saw her own reflection a decade ago, full of hope, believing talent would be enough, not yet understanding that the world was more complicated, but also more generous than it seemed in the darkest days. "Do you have experience with hydraulic systems?" "Yes, I wrote a thesis on You're Hired. Start Monday." Amara extended her hand, and when Adayez squeezed it firmly, she felt something complete, one cycle closing and another beginning. That night, alone in the hangar after everyone had left, Amara climbed onto the wing of a Cessna they were refurbishing and sat, legs swinging, looking at the ceiling where she'd hung a photo. Molef's Gulfstream taking off, silhouette cut against the pink sky. Chidi had taken it without her noticing. Her phone vibrated. Message from Naledi, the South African engineer. "Saw you got the Ethiopian Airlines contract. Congratulations. Maybe we can collaborate again soon." Amara smiled, typing the response. "Whenever you want. I learned that working together is better than working alone." She thought about Engineer Adebayo, carrying guilt to the grave. She thought about all the times she'd refused help out of pride, fear, stubbornness. She thought about her mother's voice singing over the phone that night under the jet, reminding her she was never really alone. Lagos breathed outside, chaotic, noisy, ruthless, and vibrant. Generators hummed. Someone was selling suya on the corner, the smell of spiced meat floating in the hot air. A danfo passed honking, Afrobeats music leaking through the windows. The city that had seen her fall and rise, that witnessed every tear and every small victory. Amara descended from the wing and walked to her makeshift desk in the corner of the hangar. The red notebook lay open, yellowed pages full of diagrams, notes, dreams. She turned to a blank page and wrote, "Lesson learned. Integrity was never the problem. Loneliness was. Rebuilding doesn't mean doing everything alone again. It means building differently, with a strong foundation but open doors, for help, for partnerships, for mentoring those who come after. The world doesn't need more solitary martyrs. It needs communities of people who refuse to bow together." She closed the notebook and stored it in the drawer, along with Adebayo's notes. The past could rest now. It had served its purpose, not as weight, but as teacher. 3 months later, Amara was at an aeronautical engineering conference in Nairobi. First time she'd accepted an invitation to speak publicly since the Zenith scandal. The auditorium was packed, engineers from all over Africa, some from Europe and Asia. When they announced her name, there were murmurs. She recognized the tone. Some admired, others judged. All were curious. Amara went up on stage with sweaty palms. For a second, she wanted to run. Then she remembered she had fixed what nobody could. She had rebuilt from scratch. She had chosen integrity and survived to tell the story. "My name is Amara Chidinma Okonkwo," she began, voice steady. 3 years ago, I was fired, sued, and defamed for reporting corruption. Today, I want to talk about what I learned, not about how to survive when you do the right thing, but about how to thrive." She spoke for 40 minutes about systemic failures, about the human cost of counterfeit parts, about the importance of creating support networks in industries that punish whistleblowers, about Africa developing its own standards of excellence, not just importing foreign models. When she finished, the silence lasted 3 seconds, then applause, not polite but genuine. An older woman in the front row was crying. 2 young men in the back stood up, applauding. Soon, half the auditorium was on its feet. Amara came down from the stage, trembling. Naledi was waiting with a strong hug. "You changed lives today. You know that, right?" "I just told the truth." "Exactly. And truth spoken aloud becomes a beacon." In the following months, young engineers began seeking out Amara. Some wanted jobs, others advice. A girl from Ghana called crying because she'd discovered irregularities in her company and was terrified of what to do. "Tell the truth," Amara said, "but you don't have to do it alone. I can connect you with lawyers, with NGOs that protect whistleblowers, with other engineers who've been through this. You're not alone." Okonkwo Aerospace grew organically. They didn't become a giant corporation. Amara never wanted that. But they became a reference in complex diagnostics and ethical training. Airlines from 6 African countries began sending their teams for workshops in Lagos. Thabo Molefe became a regular client and, surprisingly, a friend. He implemented rigorous audit protocols throughout his entire supply chain after the counterfeit sensor incident, uncovering corruption that ran much deeper. Lawsuits were underway, reforms happening. "You were the catalyst," he said during a visit to the hangar. "One person willing not to shut up changed an entire system. It wasn't just me. It was Naledi sharing data, Chidi reminding me who I am, Zanele running to get that part, my mother singing over the phone." Amara smiled. It was a network. It always was. 1 year after fixing the Gulf Stream, Amara was in the hangar on a Saturday morning when a daze ran in. "Amara, you have to see this." On her laptop, an article from Aviation Week, Okonkwo Aerospace nominated for Excellence in Aircraft Maintenance Award, Africa category. Amara read it twice, not believing. They cite the work with the G650. They say you exemplify technical integrity and professional courage. A daze was jumping. "You're going to Dubai to receive the award." Chidi appeared with cold sodas to celebrate. The whole team gathered, 8 people now who were more than employees. They were chosen family. They laughed, planned, dreamed aloud. But the moment that stayed with Amara happened later, when everyone had left. She stood alone in the silent hangar, holding the laptop open to the article. It wasn't the award that mattered, not really. It was what it represented. Validation. Not that she was right about the counterfeit parts. She'd always known that. But validation that choosing integrity wasn't a professional death sentence. It was a foundation for something truer, more lasting. She thought about the Igbo girl from Enugu who went to MIT with stars in her eyes, who believed being the best would be enough, who learned the most painful way that the world was more complicated, who fell, broke, and needed years to understand that rebuilding didn't mean going back to what was before. It meant building something new with the pieces. Amara closed the laptop and walked to the hangar door. Lagos pulsed in the night, lights of millions of lives, each with their own battles, victories, defeats. Planes crossed the sky, small points of light trusting in systems that worked because people like her did the right work, even when nobody saw. She breathed deeply, filling her lungs with hot air that smelled of coming rain. The rainy season was beginning. Lagos would become even more chaotic, flooded, impossible. And yet it would survive, thrive, as it always did, as she had done. Her phone rang. Unknown number again. She smiled before even answering because now she knew unknown numbers weren't threats anymore. They were possibilities. "Amara Okonkwo," she answered, voice clear. "Ms. Okonkwo, I'm calling on behalf of Kenya Airways. We have a situation with a Boeing 787 that nobody can diagnose. We were told that if anyone can solve it, it's you." She looked at the hangar behind her, her space, her team, her legacy being built day by day. She looked at the sky, where the Gulf Stream had disappeared a year ago, taking her doubts with it and bringing back her confidence. "Send me the technical details," she said. "I'll take a look." "Just you, or do you need a team?" Amara thought about Daisy, eager to learn, about Chidi, who'd been by her side from the beginning, about Naledi, always willing to collaborate, about the entire network of people she'd built, brick by brick, choice by choice. "I'm going to need my team," she replied. "I always need my team." When she hung up, she stayed one more moment at the hangar door, watching Lagos breathe and pulse and live. She thought about all the Amaras still out there, young, brilliant, terrified of doing the right thing because they'd seen what it cost those who came before. For them, she had a simple message. It won't be easy. It will cost. But you're not alone. And in the end, when you look back and see what you built, not despite your integrity, but because of it, you'll understand that every scar was worth it. Because excellence isn't a solitary performance. It's a shared legacy. Amara turned off the hangar lights and locked the door. Tomorrow would be Sunday, day to visit Mama in Enugu. Monday, new work waiting. Tuesday, meeting with potential investors to expand operations. Wednesday, workshop with university students. A life not of survival, but of purpose. Built on the ruins of what was, cemented with lessons that cost everything, and adorned with hope that refused to die even on the darkest days. She got into the Honda, started the engine, and drove through the streets of Lagos with the windows open. Afrobeats played on the radio. Pure water vendors shouted on corners. Generators hummed their electric symphony, the city in all its chaotic and resilient glory. And Amara Chidinma Okonkwo, aeronautical engineer, whistleblower, survivor, mentor, entrepreneur, drove through it with a smile on her face and tools in the trunk, ready to fix what was broken. Because that's what she did, and this time she wasn't doing it alone. Amara's story reminds us that integrity is never weakness. It's the strongest foundation on which we can build our lives. Doing the right thing may cost dearly in the short term, but pays dividends in inner peace and lasting legacy. And perhaps the most important lesson, nobody needs to carry the weight of excellence alone. True strength is in building bridges, not walls, in asking for help, in mentoring those who come after, in transforming our scars into maps so others don't get lost in the same darkness. You are not alone. Your integrity is not a flaw, and the world needs your courage. If Amara's journey touched your heart, leave your like on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss the next inspiring stories of African protagonists who are transforming the world. And in the comments, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know what part of the world this story reached. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that doing the right thing is always worth it. Until the next story.